Offense was just as bad as the defense today. I mean, everyone wants to talk about the defense for 45, but offense was just as bad.
Demolition in Dallas. The Owls had a weekend to forget down in Texas.
And it doesn't get a whole lot easier in the week ahead. The champs are in town. Inside the Nest is live, and it starts right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome inside Studio 3 for another live edition of Inside the Nest. Alongside Brooklyn Vaughn, I'm Dan Wilson.
We've got a lot for you today. We'll drop into Coach Carey's press conference, break down the Owls' next opponent, and look around the rest of the AAC. But first, we'll start by taking a look back on the Owls' second loss of the season coming out of Dallas, Texas this past weekend. The Owls were back on the road, taking on number 19 SMU in their third conference test of the season. On the Mustangs' first possession of the game, they come out of the gates swinging. Shane Buechele takes a 33-yard shot at Reggie Robertson Jr., who beats out Linwood Crump to the end zone. After an SMU field goal, the Mustangs have a chance to really put Temple in a hole on their third drive. 4th and goal, and Isaiah Graham-Mobley delivers the stop. But that only delays the inevitable. Buechele has all the time in the world in the pocket, and he spots a wide-open Reggie Robertson. That's trouble. The Owls continue to get hurt by the deep ball, and as that 75-yard connection extends, the Mustangs lead 17-0. Not long after, Ray Davis takes it into the end zone to give the Owls their first points of the day with only 5 minutes remaining in the second quarter. He ends the day with only 16 carries, but he definitely made that one count. The Mustangs strike one last time before the end of the first half. This time it's James Prochet with a 10-yard pass from Buechele. SMU up 24-7 at the half. On this play to start the third, the Russo and Mack connection is back. Brandon Mack with the 25-yard reception to put the Owls back in this one. Mack really couldn't have had a better ball from Russo to make this play happen. The Owls have themselves a close game again, down by 10. 2nd and goal for the Mustangs. Buechele escapes the pressure somehow and finds a wide-open Kylan Granson to make it 31-14 SMU. To start the fourth, Anthony Russo takes it to the house himself. That's his first rushing touchdown of the year, making it a 10-point game once again, 31-21 SMU. The Mustangs' fast-paced offense takes control yet again as Buechele airs this one out to who other than Reggie Robertson, the star of today's highlight reel. Not even Harrison Hand, one of the Owls' biggest secondary threats, can stop him. That's Robertson's third touchdown of the game. Xavier Jones goes on to score one more to seal the deal late in the fourth. Final score out of Dallas, 45-21.
I mean, everyone wants to talk about the defense for 45, but offense was just as bad. They needed to stay on the field, and they couldn't. Whether that's drops, that's missing a block, that's getting a key penalty on a third down pickup, all those things. So we had certainly had a confluence there as well. And when we didn't do those things, we went right down the field, but it just certainly wasn't consistent enough today. We certainly had our eyes wrong at times. Sometimes we just flat out got beat, Mark. And then other times we had our eyes wrong and had a communication error, I know, once as well. So, like I said, there's a lot. We got beat today. And I think sometimes you feel like you lose games. Today we got beat. And so there's a lot to fix on all areas. And we got to get in there and look at the film and get it corrected. The good news, it's correctable. Bad news is that it cost us today.
The Owls were torched in all phases of the game on Saturday, as Buechele threw for a career-high 457 yards and 6 touchdowns. If you started Reggie Robertson Jr. in a PPR fantasy league this week, he gave you 51 points. Yes, 51 points. 8 receptions, 250 yards, and 3 separate trips to the end zone. A career day for the junior receiver. For the Owls, Russo went his 3rd consecutive game without throwing an interception. However, managing the game simply wasn't enough to hang with the Mustangs.
Well, if it were only speculated before, it has been confirmed now. Temple continues to struggle immensely on the road, with that surprise in Buffalo, a sloppy win against ECU, and now a blowout loss to SMU. Fans are growing more concerned about the team's ability to perform on the road. They return home to more familiar territory at Lincoln Financial Field this week to take on the UCF Knights. And on the injury front, Benny Walls hurt himself almost 2 weeks ago in practice during a non-contact situation, and he's missed the past 2 games. Rod Carey has not given a timeline for his return, but in the meantime, redshirt junior Amir Tyler has stepped in, putting even more meaning to the program's next man up mentality. We'll have more on the impact of Benny Walls later in the show during No Huddle. Off the field now, the Owls continue their success in the classroom. Check out this tweet from Kyle Gauss. Temple football was ranked 21st among FBS teams for graduation rate. Temple athletics overall coming in ranked 38th amongst FBS programs. And one more thing, we mentioned last week that the AAC was attempting to obtain a waiver from the NCAA for a conference championship game in 2020 and 2021. You need 12 teams to have the title game, and with UConn leaving the AAC, the conference is left with just 11. But over the weekend, the NCAA approved this waiver. So the AAC is good to go as it looks for a new team to take UConn's place. Commissioner Mike Oresco says it's really a relief that this got done. The conference championship is so important to this league.
Back to the game, where the Owls secondary has risen to the occasion this year. From preventing big plays to goal line stands, it's fair to say they've been a pleasant surprise. That is, until this past Saturday. Temple's secondary has earned every bit of its success this year. After all, it's not easy replacing both Rock Ya-Sin and Delvon Randall, but neither is stopping SMU's offense.
Got 4 wideouts for Bochelle, taking a shot deep, got a man! Touchdown! Robertson got him behind Crump.
On Saturday, the Owls faced the toughest challenge yet with the Mustangs, and for the first time this year, their secondary had no answers. Not only did the Owls give up 45 points, they also gave up 3 touchdowns of 30 yards or more.
I mean, I think that we certainly had our eyes wrong at times. Sometimes we just flat out got beat, Mark. And then other times we had our eyes wrong and had a communication error, I know, once as well. So, like I said, there's a lot.
Went down.
The Owls are in for perhaps an even bigger challenge on Saturday when they take on UCF. The Knights not only lead the AAC in passing yards this season, but they also have 3 different receivers who average more than 16.5 yards per catch.
You got to get in there and look at the film and get it corrected. The good news, it's correctable. Bad news is that it cost us today. So with that, we can open up.
Much like SMU, the UCF passing attack, led by quarterback Dylan Gabriel, is going to test the Owls for the 2nd consecutive week. The Knights love to go deep, and I'm sure they'll be licking their chops when they take a look at the film from Saturday.
Dan, a rough game for the secondary, but they were not alone. Temple struggled all around during its time in Texas.
Let's take a closer look at what went wrong for the Owls in Saturday's matchup. SMU quarterback Shane Buechele had a career game against the Owls on Saturday, throwing for 457 yards and 6 passing touchdowns, tying an SMU single-game record. The transfer from Texas toyed with the Owls defense all day long, tying a season high of 30 completed passes and throwing for more than 400 yards for the first time in his college career. The only knock on his game was his completion percentage of 56.6%, which is a season low. And to put that into perspective, Anthony Russo has 4 games, including this past Saturday, in which he's fallen below that threshold.
What could have been an exceptional day for Anthony Russo was tarnished by the excessive number of dropped passes. It started with the wide-open Isaiah Wright dropping a pass on Temple's first drive of the game at the SMU's 45-yard line, and it only got worse from there. Temple ends the day with 7 dropped passes total, some of which would have been key in getting the Owls into scoring position.
The Owls running backs had a day to forget in Dallas on Saturday, as both Ray Davis and Jagger Gardner ran for their season lows in total rush yards, and both were more than a full yard below their season average per carry. Davis scored the Owls' lone first-half touchdown from a yard out, and the 16 carries he received were the lowest total since the 7 he got in the game at Buffalo. Of course, attempting to come from behind doesn't bode well for running back numbers. Davis finished the day with 54 yards on the ground, while Jagger Gardner had just 17.
The score may have been lopsided, but SMU gave Temple plenty of chances to get back into the game. On 3 straight possessions in the third quarter, the Mustangs went 3 and out and had back-to-back turnovers. The Owls were able to cut the deficit to 10 at the start of the fourth, but then the defense gave up its 3rd touchdown of the day to Reggie Robertson Jr., which sealed the Owls' fate. We have to take our first time out of the day, but when we come back, we are off to Edberg Olson Hall, where we'll hear from Rod Carey in his weekly press conference.
Don't go anywhere. Inside the Nest will be right back.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Take a look here at Edberg Olson Hall right now, where Rod Carey will soon address the media.
Yeah, and he should be coming out a lot to get to, especially today, coming off that SMU loss. And it's not going to get any easier, as we mentioned in the first segment. They, have UCF coming to the link in one of the biggest games of the year. The Owls have played much better at home, but that secondary really, posing some concerns for me at the moment. SMU was second in the conference in passing yards. UCF first. They have 3 receivers who average over 16.5 yards per catch. The Owls are going to have their hands full.
I absolutely agree with you, Dan, and I think that before he addresses the UCF situation, I think he's going to get a lot of questions, and he's going to obviously get questioned on why aren't they playing as well as they should be on the road. Does it fall on the players? Does it fall on the coaches? We'll talk about that in No Huddle, but I'm sure he's going to hear it. Why is this such a struggle for them?
Now, of course, he's not going to be focused on that this week. They have UCF at home, and he might actually rely on that, say, we're just focused on UCF, we're focused on winning at home. But regardless of the location of the game, this is still going to be a very difficult test. UCF loves to get into offensive shootouts, which in my opinion is not necessarily the type of game that the Owls should try and get themselves into, not necessarily playing to their strengths.
Right, well speaking of the offense, it looks like Anthony Russo is doing a little bit better than weeks past. He had a decent day, obviously could have been a little bit better had we hadn't had all those drop passes. I'm sure he's going to address his quarterback situation, how Centeio is going to play into the role this upcoming week. But yeah, definitely a more decent day. Oh, and we have Rod Carey at the podium right now. We're going to go ahead and drop into Edberg Olson Hall and hear what he has to say.
Here we go. So going back to last Saturday, obviously that story hasn't changed. I think that they played really well, and give them credit, and combine that with, I think we played really bad, and especially on offense. Had an opportunity to get ourselves into that game and just couldn't quite get over the hump, and struggled all day offensively. And again, give them credit. They played well, we played bad, so on both sides of the ball. With that, moving forward into UCF, obviously it's a really explosive, really good football team. This young kid they have playing a quarterback, it's now game 8. He's not young anymore. It's not like he's a true freshman anymore. He's pretty seasoned. And I know the other kid potentially could play and got some time last week as a backup as well. But they have guys that are really good at football at almost every position across the board. That there's good football players, and they play their system on offense and defense, and they execute at a high level. So it's going to be a big challenge for us again this Saturday. Nice to be at home, and nice to be at the Link Saturday night, and hopefully the rain holds off so that people come out and enjoy a fall evening at the Link. That'd be wonderful. So with that, we can open up for questions.
Injuries, Rod, Maji and Roche in particular, what's the latest?
Yeah, so I am hopeful for both of them to play on Saturday. Neither of them practiced today. But I would certainly think that both of them have the opportunity to play on Saturday.
Kind of going off of that, what do you think the impact has been not having Benny Walls on the field, just in general? You guys had a lot of good plays.
I mean, he's a senior who's played a lot of football for us, and certainly missed him on Saturday, and missed him the week before too. So we're anxious to get him back. I don't think he's quite ready for this week yet. I think there's a better chance the week after that, especially with the bye. We'll look forward to getting him back.
What have you thought of Tyler in his spot?
Amir?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amir was our defensive player of the game last week. I thought he executed his job at a high level, especially for his first start. I thought he did a really a really good job. Now there's some things he needs to get better at, and he knows that too. But he should be a lot more comfortable in that role now. And opportunity knocked, and he stayed ready coming off of an injury from the spring. So I was really happy with him.
What about working with the receivers this week, just trying to get them, back mentally? Brandon Mack mentioned, they kind of felt like they lost focus in that game against SMU, which kind of contributed to the drops.
Yeah, well, I would agree with B-Mac all day. I mean, I think there was a lost focus, not just in that position group, but across the team, because you don't go out and execute at the rate we were, which is a pretty low rate on Saturday, across the board, without there being a loss of focus. And so I don't know if there's anything special that I did with the wide receivers. We started catching balls again. So that's really, when you're in a slump as a batter, I'm sure you hit BP and do that. So, we got them out catching balls.
Rod, you talk about losing focus. You were both ranked last week. It was a big game. Did that surprise you in a game like that the focus was lost?
I don't know that the rankings had anything to do with our focus being lost. I don't know that I would equate those two. Was I shocked? Because it was SMU, a good football team that we were playing, we'd seen, and we were going on the road, that we probably didn't have the focus that we needed, and that starts with me and my ability to keep them focused. Sure, yeah, I was overall. And that's one thing that starts with me. I had to correct that and take ownership, and I think everyone on the team's done that.
You guys are 4-0 at home, 1-2 on the road. Is that coincidence, or do you think there's something to that?
I don't know. I mean, each one's been so different. Thursday night game on the road, you win. 2 Saturday road games, one in September, one in October. I don't know. And each home game's been a lot different. We've had some good opponents come in here, and it's been different all the way around. So I don't know. I don't have time to do that because I got to get on the film, and I kind of deal with each guy a little different, each team a little different that way.
What do you think of the linebacking play with Sean and IGM? This looked like they chased down a lot of
Well, when you go back and dissect last week's game, as we did on Sunday, one thing that stood out at halftime, they had 30 rushes, which is too many. They had 60 plays, but for 50 yards. So we were doing what we wanted to do as far as making them one-dimensional. It's just that dimension we couldn't quite corral the way we wanted to. And then late, after the defense was out there a lot, because our offense wasn't staying out and defense was out there, they got some runs going there. And it looked like they had rushed for maybe more than they had when the game was in question. But, but there again, you give them credit. SMU played a great game.
What do you think of UCF's running backs?
Well, they're really good players. I don't think they're that dissimilar to the backs that we just saw. Maybe different from the standpoint of they get the job done differently, but they're getting the job done and executing at a high level, and they can go the distance in, one broken tackle, and it can be 80 yards on you. So you got to do a great job of tackling on them.
Coach, a game like this can help a team, your team, achieve some goals. Maybe be goal eligible, possibly, if they win, you're still alive in the conference. Do you stress that at all, or do you not touch that at all?
Yeah, well, I don't think we're dead right now in the conference. I mean, we played 3 games. Yeah, well, no, same thing. I don't think we're dead right now. We've played 3 games. There's still 5 conference games to go. There's a lot that can happen. As far as, you get to 6 wins, that's always a marker. That's not the only marker that you want to achieve, but that's the one in front of us right now, same as in front of us last week. So, and then you got a good opponent, and you're coming home. So there's a lot of good things out there for you. But I would never equate, when we were at Northern, we lost the first game of the conference season one year and won the league. We lost the second game of the conference season and won the league. We won the first 7 and lost the 8th and didn't win the league. So I'm not one of those guys that keeps you alive or goes ahead and you're out of it. I just don't believe in that because I've done it too long when I've seen it work out a million different ways.
How do you think the offensive line has held up without Javon in there? Do you expect to get him back this weekend?
I would hope he does. This week, he played some last week. Certainly losing Joe is a loss anytime he's not in there. Pinto did a good job coming in and playing, and he's a good football player. But there's a reason that Joe's the starter and Pinto's a backup, right? And not to say that Pinto isn't working and getting better, but there's a difference there. So we'll see. Joe didn't practice today again. So we're just trying to be careful with it and see, how much we have him, I don't know.
They're going to honor the 2019 Saturday, which was the first team in 30 years to make a bowl game. Obviously, the program's in a much different spot now. How much of that history and
2009 was the first team in how long?
30 years.
In 30 years, 79 to 09? Yeah. I did not know that. They should be honored. Yeah. Absolutely.
Have you found out much about the history, especially, I guess, the program was in pretty dire straits 15 years ago? I mean, was that the Michaels on your
10,000 foot view, really. 10,000 foot view is what I kind of know the history as. I've really, and longer I'm here, I'm sure I'll dive into that more, but when you're in this first year, you're really locked in on this right here. But yeah, they should be honored. That's awesome.
Okay. One more question. Could you just give your assessment of the UCF receivers?
Yeah, so a little bit different than the guys that we saw last week from the standpoint. Both receiving corps are really good. A little bit different. They have a little more size than maybe SMU does, and they have a few more of them that they'll put on the field. They'll rotate through there than SMU did. At times SMU used a few, but UCF will use a few more. So both are good, and this is the old cliche, they get it done in a way different way. But as far as receivers going, when you're big and you can run fast and catch the ball, that's a good combination. So, both those teams have that.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
Well, there you have it. Rod Carey addressing the media at Edberg Olson Hall. We bring you back inside Studio 3 now. Dan Wilson alongside Brooklyn Vaughn. We also bring in Inside the Nest reporters Dom Gillespie and Ray Dunn. How you guys doing today?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
So I'll start it off. They have a game at home against UCF. We all know one of the biggest games of the year, but UCF likes to get into offensive shootouts. As it's constructed right now, does Anthony Russo and the offense, do they have the ability to go toe-to-toe with a team like UCF to score enough points to win the Owls this game?
I don't want to sound pessimistic, but that's definitely not the type of situation the Owls want to find themselves in going into this next week. We mentioned it a little bit last week, too. SMU was not the team we wanted to get into a shootout with. That was part of their game. SMU did that, got their offense rolling, and then the Owls struggled on offense and struggled on defense. I don't think the Owls should try to go into a shootout, especially against UCF.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Dom right there. This is not the way the Owls are going to win games. The way the Owls have won games so far this year, it's going back and forth defensively, one-possession games where they can really, work it and keep teams below that 30-point threshold. Once they get over 30 points, it's not the type of game the Owls are going to pull out.
No, I definitely in agreement with you guys. I think they actually need to slow the tempo in this game. More possessions definitely plays in the hands of the Knights.
Right, now let's talk defense. This past week we saw burnt D-backs, the absence of Benny Walls. The secondary, we knew that they needed to have a big game this past week. How influential are they going to be in the Owls if they want to beat UCF this week?
That's a great point, Brooklyn. If they struggled so much against SMU, it's going to be extremely hard to bounce back against UCF. They have the best receiver in the conference in Gabriel Davis. He leads the conference in yards and also touchdowns. And the shootouts, it's just not the way to go. Our defense can't keep up with very good offenses, as you've seen the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it right there. They're not going to be able to keep up if this game gets out of hand because of the passing game. Dylan Gabriel right now is top 10 in the nation in yards per attempt. they are going to attack downfield. They're going to attack consistently downfield. They've got a plethora of options offensively at his disposal. And if the Owls secondary is not on their game, especially without Benny Walls, they were able to get through that against Memphis, but they were not able to overcome that against SMU. If they're not able to do that this week, it's going to get out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah. That's actually my follow-up is you just heard Carrie mention that UCF's receivers, they actually go deeper than SMU's did. They're number 1 in the conference ahead of SMU in passing yards, number 1 in points per game. And he also said after the game that these problems are fixable. Are you buying that? Are they fixable, especially in 1 week?
The problems are extremely fixable, but I think that was geared towards more the offensive problems, with the drops. I think there were 7 or 8 of them in that game against SMU. That can throw off the whole offense. Defensively, especially against UCF, as we mentioned before, the receivers are tall, they're physical, they like to go deep. It's going to be hard. Owls DBs are also tall and physical as well, but it's going to be a really difficult challenge this Saturday.
I also think a lot of this falls on the offense. The offense needs to be able to stay on the field. Their third down conversion rates on the road, not good. Not good. To be nice about it, not very good. And that needs to change. If they want to be able to help out this defense is not going to be able to run up and down the field all game long with these receivers. These receivers are too quick, too fast, too big. It takes a lot to cover those guys. If the offense doesn't stay on the field, defense is going to be worn out by the end of the first half.
Right. Now, another question, I know you're going to especially talk about this a little bit with us. Rod Carey asked about that home and away record, what he's kind of thinking. He's not looking too much into it, it sounds like, with these struggles on the road.
I think he absolutely should be looking at that. I think you look at the way this team has played on the road, it's been sloppy.
Right.
When they won against ECU, the first half, sloppy.
Yep.
Ton of penalties. This week, against SMU, defense getting burnt left and right. The offense, 7 drop passes. Can't happen. Against Buffalo, that entire game was just
self-inflicted.
Yeah, it's really sloppy.
Really
just the word of the day for me now is sloppy here.
Right.
The way they play on the road, they don't ever really seem like they're prepared to go into a road game and play a complete game. That has to change. I don't know what it's going to take. They mentioned before going to ECU that they were going to change things up schedule-wise. Maybe it takes another change in schedule, but they have to figure that out. They're lucky they got UCF home this week. But looking down the road, they still got challenging games on the road. I mean, you're looking really at what could decide the Eastern Division and Cincinnati eventually down the road. Right now, obviously, the focus for Rod Carey is going to be, we're at home. We have to play like this.
Right.
He's going to give us that. Yep. But in the back of his mind, he has to know that the Owls have to be better on the road if they want to go as far as they can with this team.
Yeah.
I really like what Carey said in his press conference. A lot of the lack of focus he feels falls on him, which is a great point. I mean, it starts with the coaching staff, how you guys carry themselves going into the road. Well, the players will follow up. You saw it against Buffalo, and then the adjustments he made in ECU, and then the lack of adjustments, maybe that happened in SMU. But I really like that Carey said, it starts with me. That's a really good point to make.
I want to ask a follow-up about the quarterback really fast. Russo, he hasn't thrown an interception in 3 weeks, which he obviously had turnover problems earlier in the year, but to hang with teams like SMU, like UCF, especially this week, he has to be more than just a game manager, right?
Absolutely. The drop passes is kind of a recurring theme here. Yeah. That hindered his stats most certainly, but the fact that he's taking better care of the football going in against better teams is a very good sign moving forward this season.
All right. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Ray. Not the last of you guys. We'll see more of you later in the show. Well, we've heard from Rod Carey, but I'm sure the players have a couple things to say about the loss to SMU, especially as they prepare to take on UCF this week.
We caught up with them at practice on Tuesday to hear more.
Yeah, I say it every week. We got the 24-hour rule, whether it's a win or a loss, 24 hours to either enjoy it or to make the corrections. And then once 24 hours is up, it's on to the next week. So we had that 24 hours, watched the film, got to make the corrections this week, but we're on to UCF this week.
They're going to move the ball fast on the field, try to spread us out. We're going to do our best to compact their offense and make everything slow down for us. Try to get them on our pace instead of being on their pace.
Well, they spread you out. They get their guys in space a lot, and their guys are very crafty. They can get in and out of cuts. Their outside receivers are fast. They make their plays. They got strong guys. They got fast guys. So their offense, they can beat you in a lot of ways. We got win the run game, and then we got to win our one-on-one matchups on the outside.
Just the up-tempo scheme that they got. The little up-tempo scheme is like, it kind of throws a lot of defenses off that's not ready. You got to be prepared. It's a lot of checks you got to make, and you can't make them because how fast they go, but that we try to up-tempo thing at practice, just to get everybody ready, have everybody like in that condition mode. So once I feel like we get that down packed, then I think we'll be all right. But we're not really worried about that. If we go out there and execute everything we got to do, then everything will just fall in place. A lot of teams that we play have scored up to that amount. We have put them to a standard that we hold, but it's only up to us. If we don't go out there and do what we got to do, then it'd be a great thing.
They got a lot of speed on defense. They play hard. Their corners are going to be right up in our wide receivers' faces playing press coverage. But I think it's a great test for our wideouts. They've been playing well all year. I think this is going to be one of the best defenses we face all year. But, we're confident in our game plan if we go out and execute.
Being able to sit in coverage, we have to make sure that everyone's in the right keys and positions for us to execute the entire defense. So if everyone's not in their position, then they're gonna gash us through the thick and thin. So we have to just make sure everyone's in the right position. Just get back to what we do routinely. We know what we need to get. We know what we need to get fixed. We know what we need to work on. We're gonna get back to our basic fundamentals and just work on getting our conditioning back and getting ready for this fast-paced offense.
It seems like that is the theme of the day. Tons of things to fix. We'll see how they can do that this week with UCF. But we now bring back Ray Dunn. Ray, long time no see. Ray's going to break down just how different these home and away performances are.
Yes, and when you look at this right here, if you learned anything from the Wizard of Oz, there is no place like home. And for the Owls, that holds very much true. Looking at the numbers right here, for the offense, it's about the nation average for them in points, yards per play, and then their red zone conversion at home. But when you really get into the numbers defensively, they've been incredible. This defense is unreal. Top 15 in points per game at home, top 20 in the league opposing third down percent. Really the big thing when you look at the way they've played at home. Offense, they've been able to convert on third down. They've stayed on the field. They've been able to keep this defense off the field. And then when the defense gets on the field, they're executing at a high level. So for them, at home, this team plays around the nation's average on offense, defensively, around a top 20 team in the nation. But the problem really comes when they go away. You're going to see all these numbers are going to totally flip once they go on the road. Their 20-point differential here in points per game flips to a -10 when they go on the road. One last thing about home before we get to away here. Their turnover margin at home, +1 on the year. Doesn't seem very significant. Again, around the nation's average. That's just kind of where you get for that offense. But when they go on the road, it's -3. Now, talking about going on the road, they are incredibly inefficient on the road. You can see right here, their yards per play, 4.53. That is like 108th in the nation. In terms of yards per game, it's obviously going down. Just look at the stark difference here. They're getting outplayed, outclassed in every facet of the game on the road. And Rod Carey mentioned in the press conference he's not looking much into it right now, but this team absolutely needs to address something when they go on the road because they can't win like this. There's no way to win like this. The negative turnover differential, they're inefficient, like I said, 23 points per game. But the real stark number for me is in the first half of games on the road, they're allowing 19.3 points per game. At home, you remember, they were only allowing 11.8 points per game. Right. They're allowing more in the first half on the road than they are in a full game at home. When you think about that, they're getting down early on in the game, and this team's best asset is the fact that they are able to control the ball, run the ball, and let Anthony Russo be a game manager. In these second halves of these games on the road, they're losing, or in the case of ECU, it's a very, very close game, and they have to play out of their game. So for them, it's about that first half. It's about being able to get to the punch on the road instead of really trailing from behind. And when you look really here at the numbers, again, one more time, the efficiency on third down, I come back to that every time because it's just a real indication of how the offense plays. And clearly on the road, they haven't figured out, and the defense been torched twice now on the road by Buffalo and SMU this past weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that cannot be ignored. Well, Ray, thank you so much. It is time to go ahead and take another break, but when we come back, we'll fill you in on everything you need to know about the UCF Knights as Inside the Nest reporter Dom Gillespie joins us.
Inside the Nest, we'll be right back.
In the locker room, you only got so many opportunities. You appreciate every win, and it takes everybody inside that room pulling together to go accomplish that thing. I do want them when they come back on Monday to be real about what they see on the tape, take coaching, and implement it into the game and make improvements. I told the guys today, We've done a lot of really good things. The thing we have not done is play 3 phases of the game at the level that we're capable of for 60 minutes. And that's a challenge for us this week, going and playing a really good football team on the road.
This Saturday's target profile for the Owls is 2-time defending AAC champion UCF Golden Knights. In 2017 and 2018, UCF won a combined 25-1, including an undefeated campaign in 2017, capped off with a 34-27 Peach Bowl win over Auburn. In 2019, the Golden Knights have already doubled their loss total from the past 2 seasons. Head coach Josh Heupel is in his 2nd year as the head coach at UCF, after previously serving as the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Missouri. Heupel knows a thing or two about quarterbacks, as he himself was one at Oklahoma, finishing as the runner-up for the 2000 Heisman, leading the Sooners to an undefeated season and national championship. UCF got its season back on track with a win on Saturday against ECU, defeating the Pirates 41-28. On Saturday, expect the Golden Knights to put up points, a lot of points. UCF has scored more than 40 points in 5 of their 7 games in 2019, as the offense hasn't missed a beat without quarterback Mackenzie Milton. The Owls secondary will certainly have to bounce back from Saturday's performance at SMU if the defense has any chance of slowing down the Knights' offense.
Aside from their dominant win over ECU this past week, the Knights were able to defeat Stanford earlier this season in another thrilling win. However, they were humbled by a trick play and an upset loss to Pitt in Week 4, which, by the way, was their first regular season loss since 2016. They were handed another tough defeat by Cincinnati in Week 6, but it's not all bad news for the 2019 Knights. They currently lead the AAC in offensive points per game, averaging about 44, and pass yards per game, averaging 341 yards per game. Their defense is ranked 4th in points allowed per game. They rank 7th in passing yards allowed per game at 212, and 4th in rushing yards allowed per game with 137. Now that we've given you a history lesson and a better idea of how the Knights' 2019 campaign is panning out, let's talk about the guys who are making this all possible.
Here are the players that you need to keep an eye out for this Saturday. UCF's high-powered offense starts with quarterback Dillon Gabriel, who was picked right up where Mackenzie Milton left off. Gabriel and Milton are both from Hawaii, and just like Milton, Gabriel can throw a deep ball with ease. The freshman quarterback has totaled 2,000 yards with 17 touchdowns, throwing multiple touchdowns in every game except for one. The Owl secondary faces another tough test on Saturday.
Not only will Temple have to worry about Dillon Gabriel, they'll have to worry about his #1 receiver, Gabriel Davis. Check that out, some Gabriel squared action going on. Talk about a dynamic duo. Davis has accounted for nearly 35% of UCF's receiving yards and more than 45% of the team's receiving touchdowns. His 10 touchdowns is tied for 1st in the nation, and Davis's 833 receiving yards ranks 4th in the nation. If the Owls don't watch their backs on Saturday, all they're going to see is Davis running by them into the end zone.
And for a deeper dive into UCF, we turn to Inside the Nest reporter Dom Gillespie.
Hey, Dom.
Hey, guys. This is the most open the AAC East has been in a long time, with Cincinnati, Temple, and Central Florida all within 1 game of each other. The Owls defense is going to need to bring it Saturday against the Golden Knights if they want to stay in this race. For the past 2 years, it has been UCF running the entire American Conference, winning back-to-back titles in the 2017 and 2018 seasons. The same would have been expected of this year until their star quarterback Mackenzie Milton suffered a very serious career-ending leg injury towards the end of last season. At first, Brandon Wimbush was thought to be their guy, but after the first game, it has been Dillon Gabriel stealing the show. True freshman out of Hawaii has been torching defenses with his arm and his legs. Yes, another dual threat QB for the Owls to deal with. A big part of Gabriel's game is he loves to throw the deep ball. He is 2nd in the conference with 2,000 passing yards and is 3rd in touchdowns with 17, trailing the leaders by only 1. And he could not be doing it without the other player to watch, junior wideout Gabriel Davis, who is absolutely burning opposing defenses. You think the Owls had it rough with Reggie Robertson last week? They will have their hands full with Davis, who is atop the AAC and receiving yards and touchdowns. He's got 10 touchdowns and 833 receiving yards, both atop the conference. This Gabriel-to-Gabriel connection has been giving secondaries headaches and has left teams helpless when they both get going. The only way the Owls can slow these two down is if they get to Dillon Gabriel. Try to force him to make some mistakes, because when he takes care of the football, the Knights are undefeated. Throughout UCF's first 5 wins, Gabriel has not thrown an interception. However, in their 2 losses, he has combined for a total of 5. If there is any way to stop this dude, the Owls got to throw Gabriel off his game and force some turnovers. Reporting from Plasma, I am Dom Gillespie. Brooklyn and Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Dom. Saturday night is sure to be a big test for Temple.
Yeah, Dan, let's talk a little bit more about exactly what the Owls need to do if they want to pull out a win against these Knights. And check this out. Ben and the rest of our graphics team, they're so awesome. Hopping onto the ITN line here and checking out our stops for success this upcoming week. The Owls, their first stop for success, get on Gabriel. As Dom just mentioned, Dillon Gabriel has thrown for a combined 5 interceptions during his 2 losses. So if that's any indicator of a weak spot, it's one the Owls need to capitalize on. From the inside or off the edge, Temple's defense needs to make pressuring Gabriel a priority if they want to keep the Knights' offense under control.
Look, I understand that the Owls defense and the coaches are going to want to watch film and correct last week's struggles, but you got to eliminate last week from your memory. The Owls are going to need their best defensive game of the season. UCF is the best passing attack in the AAC with 341 yards in the air per game, and they love to go deep. Wide receiver Gabriel Davis is having a monster season, torching defenses deep for an average of 119 yards and 1.5 touchdowns per game. The defense has kept the Owls in many games so far this season, but it got exposed on the road on Saturday versus SMU. UCF is going to be another test at that level.
All right, go ahead and move that train. Back on the offensive side of things. I want to see a ground and pound approach from the Owls. They're going to want to establish a strong run game to exhaust the Knights' defense, and with guys like Jagger Gardner and Ray Davis, they are capable of executing it well. Those two need to definitely have a better performance than they did down in Texas against SMU, though. Combined, again, they only rushed for 71 yards in that matchup. Keep in mind, UCF is allowing an average of 137 rushing yards per game.
Last thing the Owls need to do, they need to slow down the tempo. UCF loves to get into offensive shootouts, and a game like that certainly does not favor the Owls. An offense centered around big, efficient plays is going to benefit from an increased number of possessions in this game. That's definitely favoring UCF, which is why the Owls need to slow the game down. The longer Dillon Gabriel and the UCF offense is on the sideline, the better it is for Temple.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. The Owls, they definitely have their work cut out for them. And as for us, it is time to go ahead and take another break.
When we come back, we're going no huddle. Find out our take on the Owls' road struggles, which single digit has lived up most to the honor, and of course, our predictions for Saturday's game. We're back in 90 seconds.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest, and welcome back to everyone's favorite segment, No Huddle.
6 minutes, 6 topics. Here we go. Brooklyn, first question. Who's to blame more for the Owls' road struggles? Is it the coaching staff or the players?
I'm going to say both. I'm leaning towards the players, but Rod Carey actually just addressed this today. I find it interesting. He says he doesn't have time to think about preparing differently. He's got to hit the film. So again, I think I just saw less of a spark out of the players this week on the road. Those drop passes, Isaiah Wright, totally off his game. I'm going to say it's on the players for right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort, but I'm going to put the blame on the players as well. As you mentioned, Isaiah Wright likely had the worst game of his entire career. The defense had their worst game of the season. Going back to Buffalo, the offense and special teams couldn't find any sort of rhythm. It's definitely on the players who are actually playing the game.
Right. Next question. Is Benny Walls the X factor Temple's secondary needs to return to its early season form?
Don't get me wrong. Not having Benny Walls the past 2 weeks has been a huge loss, especially against SMU. But I'm not going to say he's the X factor. This secondary proved they were capable against Memphis. Harrison Hand, Linwood Crump, Freddie Johnson, these are all names who have played very well in that Temple secondary, and they have proved that they can do it without one guy. And here's the other thing. As good as Benny Walls is, he would not have made up the difference on Saturday in Dallas.
Yeah, Dan, you might be right, but this guy, he can tackle, intercept, He can recover fumbles, and he can turn them into big plays too, which is something super important. Remember that 74-yard fumble recovery, returned for a touchdown in the Maryland game, 65-yard interception return against Georgia Tech. Those are types of plays that the Owls are going to need. They're going to need guys that can make them like Benny Walls. I think he's it. I think he is the X factor that this team's missing. Again, probably not going to be ready to go for this week, unfortunately, but Rod Carey mentioned he does miss them. He does miss him a whole lot.
Brooklyn, it was not a good weekend of football for fans in the city of brotherly love. Which Philadelphia football team had the more disappointing loss in Dallas this past weekend?
Well, Dan, I'm glad you asked because boy, do I have some things to say. I'm going no cap on no huddle right now. Unpopular opinion. Although I didn't think the Eagles would lose so badly, I did expect them to fall short against the Cowboys. The difference here is that I really thought at this point that Temple would be able to go to Dallas and finally execute a team win. And for that reason, I'm more frustrated with that loss. The Eagles struggled with similar setbacks. You have your drop passes, the burnt D-backs, but there was no excuse for Temple to lose this one like they did. For them to rack up 2 wins against 2 ranked opponents, which is an impressive feat, and then for them to go to Dallas and just let the wheels fall off, not cool. You know, they squashed my hopes of a College Game Day appearance in Philadelphia. Think about it. There was actually a chance that College Game Day could have made its way back to Philly this week. Well, not after that mediocrity. Instead, they're going to go to Brookings, South Dakota. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound as fun as Philly. So we're going to have to blame this one on that loss to the Ponies.
Yeah, it was. Both teams were embarrassed in Dallas, that's for sure. But the Eagles, I'm going to go that their loss was worse. They already have 4 losses to get into the playoffs. You really can only afford to lose 2 or 3 more. Still got teams like the Patriots remaining, and they don't look like a team who is going to come out of the wild card. The NFC East has not been strong this season. That's a very, very important loss at the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night. Temple football still 1 win away from qualifying for a bowl, still control their own destiny to get to the AAC championship game. I'm going to side with the Eagles here.
Right. All right, moving on. Next question now. We're over the halfway point of the season. Dan, which single digit has lived up to the honor the most, in your opinion, thus far?
Another unpopular opinion from me thus far. I'm going to go Brandon Mack. Number 1, the receiver, he's been a baller. He's leading the team in receiving yards. He's been Anthony Russo's favorite target all year long. He has had a great season. He's already matched his receiving yards from a season ago, or nearly matched it anyway. This guy has been a standout stud for the Owls offense. He's been consistent. He's been a deep threat. He's been a vertical threat. Guy does it all. I'm going with Brandon Mack.
All right, Brandon Mack, a great pick, but I have to say Sean Bradley, and for me it's no question. He leads the team, 38 solo tackles, 47 total tackles. You know, beyond the numbers, this is translating. He is standing out as a player and a person in this role. You have to remember, going back to his freshman year, gray shirting, and now senior year, he's making some of the most prestigious watch lists in the country. He's a great presence in this leader room, you can tell. He's fun to watch, and I think he's really doing a great job, again, growing as just a person and a player in this role.
Brooklyn, the Owls have a huge game on Saturday. The Owls have a chance to win the AAC East if they still have to win at Cincinnati to do it.
I'm going to say yes. Everything inside of me right now wants to say no because on paper, especially on the road, you know, you have that vengeance. Cincinnati, that game, they remember how that felt last year to get beat by Temple. They're not going to want that again. And they're already in their home stadium, of course. It's not easy for Temple to win on the road. So, again, I want to say no, but they do have enough time to get their ducks all in a row. So hopefully by the time they head over there, November 23rd, they're going to be able to take down Cincinnati at their own stadium.
I think that the biggest thing you just hit on is that Cincinnati game is still more than a month away, or just about a month away, rather. They will be going at Cincinnati. We know about the Owls' road struggles, but they still control their own destiny. 4 of the remaining 5 games are against the AAC East. It's basically up to the Owls whether they want it or not, but it starts with a win this weekend against UCF, and they're probably going to have to win that Cincinnati game also, as they are still undefeated in the AAC East and in the AAC as a whole.
Right, now speaking of UCF, everyone hails to this segment right here. No Huddle. They want to know, Dan, what do you think is going to go down in the link on Saturday night? Remember, Temple's +10. I don't know how they're a +10 team in this matchup, but they are.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by the line. I think Temple's going to lose a close one. I understand they're back at home. They play much better at home. You saw Ray's segment. The numbers are certainly there to back that up, but this offense for UCF definitely concerns me. This secondary for the Owls definitely concerns me, and they just got torched in Dallas against SMU. I think they're going to see a lot more of the same. UCF's offense ranks even just higher than SMU, and they go deeper than SMU does. I think it's going to be a very, very hefty hill to climb for the Owls defense. All
right, fair enough, but I'm going to take the Owls on this one. You said it yourself. You know, they're back at home. Saturday night, primetime game against one of their most anticipated opponents of the season. They can't mess this one up. Again, I'm going to take the Owls. They're going to come out on top, and they're going to keep a little bit of control over in the East, the AAC East, moving forward.
Well, someone's going to take a lead in the standings this week. It's just a matter of who does it. We're going to take a breather here in Studio 3, but stay with us.
When we get back, we're going to take a closer look around the AAC, and we'll talk about some former Owls taking their football careers down a new path. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Let's go ahead and take a look at the AAC standings by the week. Houston, we have a problem. We're not going to worry about them right now, though. Let's pay attention to who's on top. Cincinnati and SMU, they're undefeated at the top of the East and the West. SMU, remember, they are undefeated overall at 7-0.
Yeah, the Owls, as I mentioned early in the show, they still control their own destiny. 4 of the remaining 5 games against AAC East teams and against 2 of the most important ones, UCF this Saturday and Cincinnati in November.
Right. And remember, there's 7 teams in the athletic conference that are already bowl eligible or only a win away. That's super interesting to keep into consideration as these weeks continue to progress on.
Yeah, it's huge to take into consideration. A conference that was formed just a few years ago, and now they already have potentially 7 teams who are going to be bowl eligible. The Owls needing just 1 more win to get there. But Cincinnati and SMU clearly in the driver's seat as we get to the end of these standings. They don't play head-to-head, but the college football playoff ranking, they would determine the site of the AAC championship game if the record was the same.
All right, now let's go ahead now and take a look at the AAC games on tap. Thursday night, SMU looks to keep its undefeated season alive as the Mustangs travel to Houston for their 2nd AAC road game on the season.
And after suffering a road loss at Memphis last week, the Tulane Green Wave will try to bounce back as they head to Annapolis to take on the Navy Midshipmen.
Topping off our lineup is Memphis at Tulsa. Tulsa, remember 2 weeks ago, they took SMU to triple overtime on the road. The Golden Hurricane will look to rain on the Memphis Tigers, who have the chance to win their first conference road game.
And the NFL isn't the only place to find former Temple Owls going pro. Remember the XFL? Well, they had their newly XFL draft. It was held last week for the 2020 inaugural season. The league owner and the self-proclaimed chairman of the WWE, Vince McMahon, and he'll see former Owls Colin Thompson, Cole Boozer in the Eastern Conference with the Tampa Bay Vipers and DC Defenders. And out west, Philip Walker and Leon Johnson will join forces once again in the Houston Roughnecks. And staying out west, Adonis Jennings and Jalen Robinson will be heading to the City of Angels to play for the LA Wildcats. Praise Martin Okukwe and Evan Rodriguez take their talents to the Pacific Northwest for the Seattle Dragons.
And that'll wrap it up for this edition of Inside the Nest.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.